Hello, I'm Catherine. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I'm going to talk about doing same or similar designs on paper and on fabric. And there are lots of different ways you can do this. You can use the same printing, so if you're doing something with a jelly plate, you can do that on paper and then you can do it on fabric. The only difference is if you want the fabric to stay nice and sort of pliable in case you want to stitch into it, it's best not to use acrylics. I mean, you can use acrylics, but you're going to get a sort of film as it sits on top of the fabric. If you mix it with a bit of fabric medium, about half and half, you get a much more soft finish to the fabric. Or you can use paint that it's specifically a fabric paint, and that will make it pliable as well. And there are lots, so as I say, there are lots of different ways you can do this. You can use the same methods, a lot of the same methods I do on fabric as well. I'll show you one or two of those in close-up. I do my thermofax printing, I do the jelly printing, and even drawing and painting straight onto the fabric you can do. But another method that you might not be so familiar with is printing a design, and this is done, I mean, some people have their own printers. I haven't gone that far. They have large scale printers, and you send them a digital copy of whatever you want to print, and they can do it in several. You get a big choice of different fabrics. You get a choice of either pigment or dyes, and I like to get mine done with dyes because that's what I use when I'm dyeing my own fabric, and it just gives you, I quite like the sort of continuity. And also there are certain things you can do with dyed fabric. For instance, you can do something called discharge, which is a type of bleaching, and you can do that on dyes but not pigment. So that's another reason to use this. And what I wanted to do in my sketchbook, which I've done one or two videos about, I didn't like that page so much. There were several pages that I rather liked, and I thought it would be fun to get those printed onto fabric, and that's what I've done. So let me take you over and you can see it in more detail. So I'll put the details of the company that I use. There's several. The one I use, they had a really good range of fabrics, and as I say, I wanted it done with dyes. Also, you could have a test square done. Now, I will insert a shot of that because I can't find it just at the moment, but you could upload your design or some details from your design, and you'd get a piece about that big. I think you just had to pay for the postage, and they'd send that to you. And so I've literally just taken the pages from my sketchbook. Let me find one that's done. So you see that I've just made it a little bit bigger, but you can see how accurately that's come out. Let me find another one. And when I got the test square, it was really useful because the colours looked a bit too saturated. So when I did my final upload of the designs, I knocked the colour back a bit. So that one is there. So you can see how really accurately it's caught all those details. And there's the ammonite. So I've made them a bit bigger. And I had them just sort of done, I just did it the most economical way I could fit them onto the fabric. And then I've cut them up into individuals. Now, this is going to be a quilt, a stitched piece, and I've already done 3 panels, although they're not quite finished yet. And I'll show some close-up of those. I've been doing some free machine embroidery to both pick out the details and to fill in the background, because what I love about quilting is that where you stitch it recedes, and where you don't it's slightly puffy, so that's why it makes these feathers look really 3D, and I love that effect, and you can't really get that any other way. And I could have just done it, in one complete piece and had them all joined together, and I didn't do it like that for a couple of reasons. One, if you're stitching just with a regular sewing machine on a big piece, it's really tricky. You have to sort of keep bunching it up, and it makes it hard to, what you need to do when you're free machine sewing, it's not so much that you're drawing with, although you call it drawing with a needle, you're actually, it's the movement of the fabric underneath, and you want to make that as smooth as possible, and then you've got the most control, and it means you can decide where you're going to change direction, rather than because it's got caught or something. So I do find doing larger pieces really tricky. There is something called a long arm quilter, so if you're doing a lot of that sort of thing, or big bed-size quilts, that's a useful tool, but I don't do enough to justify that. So I decided to do them separately for that reason, to make it easier to stitch, and also, and I still haven't decided because this is a work in progress, I still haven't decided whether I'm going to, because what I could do is stitch them all and then join them all together in various ways. So I could do that, or I could keep them as individual ones but just sort of display them all together. I do have this one idea that to do that as individual ones, but I did have this idea that I'd quite like in the sort of, if I did join it all together, I could put more details sort of in the borders here. Just some extra details that I'd rather fancy doing. And although I can't do that if I keep them as separate pieces, I think I might, if I do keep them as separate pieces, I might display them, but I might have some pieces in between that aren't actually connected to these quilts. But I could put that detail up, but it would look like they were. It would look like one piece, but it would actually be 9 separate ones. And I'm also thinking, because it's for an exhibition, it'd be lovely if I sold some of my work, and I think I've got more chance of, not many people either want something this size or have got the space to display this. So, thinking of it slightly commercially, smaller pieces would be easier to sell. So I'm slightly thinking like that. As I say, I think what I really like about the printing is that you can see all the sort of brushed works and the lines. This was from a monoprint, and I'll take you in for a close-up and show you that. So this is part 1 of the evolution of this quilt, and I will do another video in a little while and update you. So thank you so much for watching. See you again soon.